Thank you, and it's great to be here. I was listening very carefully to my friend Bob, and before you think too highly of Republicans and conservatism, he's a very unusual guy. Number one, he's intelligent. Number two, he has a sense of humor. And number three, he has integrity. He lost a primary in South Carolina because he wasn't seen to be a Republican. So, you know, his own folks thought he was too intelligent, too humorous, and had too much integrity. By the way, he voted, you remember the guy, Joe Wilson, from his state, who said you lie to the, and there was a vote on censuring him or reprimanding him or something. This man voted for that resolution. One of the two Republicans I know. So naturally, they beat him. So let's not think too highly of them. But the Republicans have done us a favor in the last election that I think we have to take advantage of. They have given us 2 years to think. Nothing is going to happen in Washington. And we ought to, I mean, you do all the poli-science 101 stuff of, you know, introducing a bill and writing to your congressman, all that. But we have to create a movement during the 2 years that they have given us. Because, I mean, these guys have come in, I mean, it was like, you came in 94, didn't you?
92.
Oh, you came, okay. These 94 guys and now these guys, you know, these revolutionaries. Science is a liberal plot. I mean, you don't believe science. It's just, they don't believe it. I mean, they think opinion is fact. They don't believe in evolution. They don't believe in global warming or climate change. You know, just pick it out. It's because, you know, intellectuals are Democrats and we're trying to confuse the average voter. I remember when your leader came in '94, he bragged about not having a passport. Everything you need to know is right here in America. Why would you ever travel outside? So the anti-intellectualism, the anti-science is just incredible. And we know from history. I was an academic in my youth before I became a congressman. I'm an historian of science. You look at the history of science and you see where ideological or even religious-driven approach to science has destroyed science in that particular civilization, whether it was the Catholic scientists in the 17th century or Soviet science in the 20th century or Nazi science. They were all trying to be ideological. Well, science has to go by its own logic and its own dynamic, and you cannot judge it by ideology. Well, these new guys in Washington are doing that. It's going to wreck science. But I think we're going to have a 2-year break to do whatever we want. Science says that's going to fall toward me. And I believe in science. I really think that we have to take this time to regroup. I'm just going to take my own some personal experiences just for a few seconds. I'm a child of the 60s. And I got involved in the civil rights movement pretty early in my life, and was one of the first, if there's too many young people here, they won't even know what I'm talking about, but I was one of the first freedom riders in 1961 and spent several months in the state penitentiary in Mississippi. And what I learned from that experience, forget the personal stuff, is looking back, if you get involved in the political life of your nation, of this nation, you can actually change history. A few hundred, a few thousand of us marched for civil rights, sat in, went to jail. Some got killed. I had a friend killed right in front of me. It was not the safest thing in the world. But we changed history. We didn't make it perfect. We didn't make America perfect. There's still racism and there's still discrimination. We know that. But we desegregate. We broke down all the legal segregation in the South. And I'm looking back. I'm looking at that and say, here I am, 18 years old. I'm part of a movement that changed American history. Wow. That gave me an optimism about change in this society that still stays with me today. We got a lot of problems, a lot of special interests, a lot of corporate whatever. But I think probably more than any other country in the world, this is where I believe with your exceptionalism, there are places for us to move and work in and organize that we have an unparalleled ability to do. Probably more than any other country. The fact is, though, that we haven't used them. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think you have no power, you don't have power. We believe that we did. And to bring the analogy to the current situation, you had a president in 1960, John Kennedy. He was not as liberal as Mr. Obama is, but he represented change. He was the first president born in the 20th century. He didn't have a program of civil rights. We gave it to him. We forced it on him. He was open to change. It was a new administration. It was a Democratic administration. Does that sound familiar? They were open to change and hope. But we had to give it to them. They didn't have a civil rights law. There were too many Southerners in the Congress. We gave it to them. They didn't have a Voting Rights Act. We forced it on them. They didn't want to end the war in Vietnam. And there were, hundreds of thousands, millions of people marched and brought an end to that war. So we have an administration capable of change, but that ain't going to happen in Washington. As you saw even before this election, the forces of reaction and inertia are very strong. And if you don't resist them, the Tea Party takes over. Where were we, by the way, when the Tea Party got all the thing about, Obamacare? Where were the single-payer people? Some of us had meetings and other things, but we didn't do it like they did it. So they won. And Obama, wants to be toward the center. Well, we have to give him a progressive end to it. We got to be out in the streets, or metaphorically, or in actual fact. We have to make sure that climate change is on the agenda, that we give it to them, we force it on them. You have an administration that wants to be in the center, bless their hearts. When they started the health care negotiations, they dropped single payer before they even negotiated. When they had the climate change bill, they dropped the carbon tax before they even negotiated. How are you going to get out a decent bill? In both cases, they thought, by the way, they were going to get Republican votes. That's why they did it. When there were no Republican votes, why didn't they go back to the Democratic one? I don't know why. They just kept going with the one that, even though they didn't have any Republican votes. So we have to change them. And we have to change in the 2 years that we have, because, I'll repeat again, I don't know if you guys agree with me, nothing is going to happen in Washington. I mean, it's going to be gridlock. I'm going to have a good time because I like to throw bombs. And before, when I'm in a majority and I have to govern and do all those things, I get nervous, but I get arrested, by the way, every 2 or 3 years, or my constituents think I've sold out, so I go. We have to influence what I call the infrastructure. I'll call it the infrastructure of public opinion. Every politician, no matter how much you think they're bought off by corporations or conservative or this, we have incredible antenna for public opinion. We know what our people are thinking. Believe me. That's our job's dependent on it. We refine that antenna. When I go home every weekend and I land at the airport in San Diego, in 30 seconds I could tell you the unemployment rate and how many people are crossing the border illegally. Because, I'm like a magnet. Everybody comes up to me, the shoe shine guy, the pilots, the people going on other flights, the people selling newspapers. They all know I'm the congressman, and they all tell me what's going on. And how do I campaign? What do I do when I'm home? I go where public opinion is made. That's where we all have to go, or you all have to go. I go to the Lions Club and the Kiwanis and the PTAs and the union halls and the church committees and ethnic groups and neighborhood associations. Whenever I talk to a progressive group and in my area, I said, have you ever been to the National City, which is this little city in my district, the National City Lions Club? And they'll say, oh no, they're too conservative. And I say, if you can't convince the National City Lions Club, you ain't going to convince the congressman. because that's where he or she is getting the sense of public opinion. Because when we're campaigning, we're going into all those places, right? So why aren't you in all those places? You're talking to congressmen. They're a waste of time. They reflect public opinion. We reflect public opinion. And you got to change public opinion. And you change public opinion by going where they go, where it's made, where all these people meet and talk about things and they trade cliches about America. But if you're not there, they're not going to even know what's going on, whether it's global warming or any other issue that we talk about. In the background, it said that the American Geophysical Union had 700 scientists ready to talk. Well, we take those and magnify it by all the people that Marshall Saunders has trained and others. During the Vietnam War, we started with teach-ins. I don't think it's a bad concept now, except we got to expand it. We start with the colleges and the high schools, by the way. We got 7 high school kids from Amherst High School right there. I call them the Amherst 7 because they're starting the revolution right at Amherst High School. So you're going to hear from them in the future. Look, we have teach-ins. People don't know. We had Inconvenient Truth, but as you said, it's passed a little bit. People don't know what's really going on and how recent stuff is. Let's start at the colleges, but let's go on. Let's go to the service clubs. Let's go to the PTAs. Let's go to churches. Let's go to neighborhood groups. We have to go wherever people are, because we, the Congress people, are influencing our reflection of that. You're going to get to us if you get to them. It's harder. It takes a little longer at first, but it's far more effective. Because you're going to get the city council people, you're going to get the county commissioners, you get the state legislatures at the same time, because they're going to the same groups. Now, many of you say, well, you're talking about campaigning, and we don't get involved in politics. Some of you, that's dirty, there's money and all this corporations and stuff. You've got a lot to learn from politics. Not that you should get corrupt like this system is. But there are these focus groups, for example, that you can make fun of. But I'll tell you, they come out with uses of language that influence a lot of people. You start off with carbon tax, we lose. He slurred over it so we wouldn't know it. But what if, I don't know, if I gave you five minutes in this group of intellectuals here, you could come up with 100 better things than carbon tax that would sell it better. And it wouldn't compromise the integrity of the issue. I don't know, an air quality incentive. So, and you have a nice acronym for it, or a nice, three initial word. You gotta worry about the language. And you gotta worry about the people who are affected by the changes. We can't just say, in the macro sense, green jobs will replace the other jobs. We'll have more jobs. The miner who loses his ability to pay his mortgage, the coal miner, or send his kids to college, we cannot forget. They have to be our first priority. Even if we have to say, you still got more applause than I did, Bob. I'm counting. Even if we have to say, I'm going to make sure that the next 10 years of your salary, your mortgage payments, your college, we're going to pay for it. We lose West Virginia, we lose, all the Appalachian, and they each got 2 senators, by the way. They each got 2 senators, so they can block anything. So it's political as well as personal. Important for us not to forget those people. Anybody who is losing out, we have got to say, we care about you. We are not going to let you drown. We're not going to let you lose your house. We're not going to let you lose your college education. We're not going to let you, and we'll retrain you, and we'll give you, a decade to figure this out. Or if you're over 50, you start your Social Security, 15 years, or whatever. We can sit down and do this if we think it through, if we cannot forget them. We cannot forget the language. Who's the guy in your party that does it? Frank Lutz?
Frank Lutz, yeah.
Lutz. He sits down, he calls, they call their clear cutting of forests, the Healthy Forest Initiative. That guy comes up with this stuff to sell them, and it works. We're as clever as they are, come on. Without losing our integrity about it. So I'm writing a little book, Jim, about that I call Laws of Politics that I figured out as a congressman. One of them, well, it used to say, well, however you communicate with a, no, it said, well, whatever you do with a politician in private, find a way to do it in public. Then Clinton came along and I had to change it to, however you communicate with a politician in private, find a way to do it in public. That is, when you send me a letter, like even this million, that's a very private thing. I could say whatever I want about it. You could say, oh, I got my mail 60-40 running in my favor, right? I mean, we could say whatever we want. You could call, fax, email. It's all to say. It's private. Whatever you do in private, find a way to do it in public. You write a letter to the editor. Don't just take a letter to the editor of the one daily paper or the weekly paper. I read 150 papers a week from my district. There are newsletters, from unions, there's neighborhood associations, there's church bulletins. They all have editors, and they all have letters, and they all have things to say, and everybody's reading them. Why aren't we in them all? I read those first, because I know they affect more people than the single letter to me does. You call me up, call a talk show. Now, talk shows in general are not generally with us. But get on them anyway. And if they don't like you to talk, any 10 people here can tie up probably any talk show in America. Just call them at the same time. Tie up all their lines if they won't talk to you. I mean, we can do this. This is not hard if you think about it. I'll tell you one thing. When I said, this is an open system, every television station in America has got by law to provide you with 2 minutes for a public service announcement. Any group that asks. How many of those announcements do you see on television about these kind of political issues? Hardly any. Nobody knows about it, or if they do know about it, they think they're not good enough, or they, go on. You can do a global warming message on every television in America every week. Why aren't we doing it? It's free. Television is still the biggest determinant of people's beliefs. Television is still the strongest. Why aren't we on there? Marshall, I said this to you a year ago. We're still not. No, I'm saying this society provides us with an openness to influence public opinion like no other society. Let's take advantage of it. Let's build the movement. We'll elect the candidates, and we'll pass the laws that we have to do.